the first aspects of Buddha and Maitreya reveal themselves in the Kalania temple near Colombo. The powerful images are guarded in the dusk of the temple. Hinayana prides itself before many varied Mahayana on the refinement and purity of its philosophy. The great restored stupa near the temple reminds one of the ancient foundation of this place. But, after all, only in fragments do Colombo and Ceylon recall the ancient Lanka of Hanuman, Rama, Ravana, and other giants. And for Buddhism, Ceylon is an important site. Many temples and palaces guard the fragments of one of the best periods of the teaching. Outside of the ruins which are known, numerous unsuspected treasures are buried under the roots of powerful jungles. That which has remained above the soil gives an idea of the past splendor of the former mighty city. You do not need to search for the places. They proclaim themselves, but exploration can only give results if it is carried on in a broad measure. One must approach such ruins fully fortified, as one palace alone has 900 chambers. Ceylon is an important site. The public baths near the bittersweet mountain, Lavinia, do not suggest the domain of ancient giants. Slender palms shamefacedly bend down to the spray of the tide. Like skeletons stand the fragments of Anuradhapura. Consider that Anuradhapura is not entirely explored, and Adam's Peak is not enticing. By the remains of Anuradhapura, one may judge how powerful was Borobudur in Java, and again, ceaselessly, are gliding by the faces of our fellow travelers, the Japanese, with whom we wept over the remains of the Cairo pyramids, which have passed from a valiant history to become the curio museum of a greedy guide. Is it really India? A thin shoreline, meager little trees, crevices of desiccated soil. So does India hide its face from the south. And the Black Dravidians as yet do not remind us of the Vedas and Mahabharata. Multicolored is Madura, with the remains of Dravidian strata. All the life, all the nerve of the exchange was near the temple. In the passages of the temple are the bazaar, the court, the sermon, the reciter of the Ramayana, the gossip, and the sacred elephant who wanders in freedom, and the camels of the religious processions. The ingenious stone carving of the temple is colored with the present-day crude colors. Sarma, the artist, sorrows over it. But the city council did not listen to him, and colored the temple according to their own plan. Sarma is saddened that so much of fine understanding is gone, and has as yet been replaced only by indifference. He warns us not to go far in our European attire, because some elements of the population may be hostile, and yet Madura is a city of 1 million. Sarma inquires about the condition of artists in Europe and America. He is genuinely surprised that the artists of Europe and America can live by the labor of their hands. It is incomprehensible to him that art can provide a means of livelihood. With them, the occupation of artist is the most profitless one. There are almost no collectors. Sarma himself, tall, in white garments, with sad, calm speech, awaits something better, and knows all the burden of the present. There was no possibility of a meeting with Tagore. Strangely, such things happen in life. In London, the poet found us. Then in America, we succeeded in meeting him in New York, and he also met George in Boston. But in India itself, we did not meet. We could not go to Bolpur, and Tagore could not be in Calcutta. He already was preparing for his tour in China. There were many curious occurrences. In Calcutta, we tried to find Tagore. We thought that in his native city, his name would be known on every corner. We took a motor and requested to be taken straight to the poet Tagore, and in vain, we rode for 3 hours through the city. First, We were taken to the Maharaja Tagore. Then 100 policemen and peddlers and passing babus sent us into the most varied alleys. Finally, 6 volunteer guides were hanging on our motor, and so we ourselves, in this bushy manner, finally remembered the name of Dwarka Nath Tagore Street, where the house of Tagore was situated. It is said that when Tagore received the Nobel Prize, a deputation from Calcutta came to him, but the poet severely asked them, "Where were you before? I remain the same person, and the prize has not added anything to me." Greetings to Tagore. We met the relations of our friend Tagore, Abanindranath Tagore, brother of Rabindranath, artist head of the Bengal school, Goganendranath Tagore, nephew of the poet, also an artist, secretary of the Bengal Society of Artists. Now he imitates the modernists. A splendid artist is Kumar Haidar, present director of the school in Lucknow. Hard is the life of the Hindu artist. Much resolution is needed in order not to abandon this thorny path. Greetings to the artists of India. Why is it that in all countries of the world, the condition of scientists and artists is so precarious? Thorny also is the way of the Hindu scientists. Here, before us is an example, in a struggling young scientist, a biologist and pupil of Sir Jagadish Bose. He began his laboratory in the name of Vivekananda. In his peaceful little house above the laboratory is a room dedicated to the relics of Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, and other teachers of this group. This young man, pupil of the closest pupil of Vivekananda, carries into life the principles of this master, who fearlessly proclaimed his evocation to action and knowledge. In this little top chamber, he formulates his thoughts, surrounded by the things which belonged to his beloved leaders. One remembers vividly the portraits of Ramakrishna and his wife. Both faces impress one with their purity and striving. We sat in complete silence near this memorial hearth. Greetings. Who can explain why the path of knowledge and beauty is the most difficult? Why does humanity accept with such hesitation all that is predestined? It is therefore the greater joy to see in India the signs of an ascent of knowledge and art. It is joyful to see that in India the number of schools is increasing and that legions of new enlightened workers for science and beauty are ready to serve in the victory of evolution. In Calcutta, not far behind the city, are 2 monuments to Ramakrishna. On one shore, Dakshineswar, the temple where long-lived Ramakrishna. Almost opposite, across the river, is the mission of Ramakrishna, the mausoleum of the teacher himself, of his wife, of Vivekananda, and a collection of many memorable objects. Vivekananda dreamt that here should be a real Hindu university. Vivekananda took care of this place. There is a great peace here, and it is with difficulty that one realizes oneself so near to Calcutta, with all the terror of its bazaars and confusion. We met Sister Christine, almost the only living pupil of Vivekananda. Her useful work was broken up by the war, and now, after the lapse of many years, Sister Christine has returned again to the old site. The people are changed, the consciousness is consumed with local problems, and it is not easy for Sister Christine to find contact with the new waves of Hindu life. On the memorable day of Ramakrishna, as many as 500,000 of his admirers gather, from the purest to the most hideous. In special streets of Bombay, behind bars, sit the women prostitutes. In this living merchandise which clings close to the bars, in these outstretched hands, in their calls, is contained the whole terror of bodily desecration. And a Hindu sadhu passes through with his burning incense in order to purify the spot. When we entered the Chartered Bank of India, Out of the door there came to meet us the sacred cow. And how strikingly amusing was this correlation of bank and sacred cow. The tigers roar in Jaipur. The Maharaja has forbidden anyone to shoot them. In Golta Pass, 2 tribes of monkeys are at war. The guide arranges a battle for a most reasonable fee. Nowadays, all battles may be arranged thus easily. He fakirs are seated, charming the old half-living toothless cobras. The pitiful Hatha yogi is whirling in the bazaar, making the most gymnastic contortions for the purification of his spirit. The spiritualist offers to make the carriage move without horses, but to do this, it is necessary that there should not be one cloud in the sky. And along with this is a fantastic and romantic fragment of old Rajputana. Amber, where the princesses looked down from their balconies upon the tournaments of their suitors, where every gate, every little door, astonishes one by the correlations of its beauty. Near here is the penetrating and fantastic Golta Pass, which could not be imagined in any fantasy. Only the play of life can accumulate such unexpected creations. And here also is Jaipur, with its fairy-like astrological observatory, and with the charm of an unspoiled Hindu-Muslim city. Fatehpur Sikri, Agra, rare chips of a departed culture, and the frescoes of Ajanta are already unsafe. All the remains of the constructions of Akbar have a veil of seeming sadness. Here the great unifier of his country buried his best visions, so misunderstood by his contemporaries. In Fatehpur Sikri, he conversed with his wise Birbal, and with the few who had attained his level. Here he built the temple of universal knowledge. Here he lost his few friends, and foresaw that the welfare of the state created by him would not be preserved. And Agra and Fatehpur Sikri are full of a kind of limitless sorrow. Akbar knew how the well-being which he bestowed on his people would be pillaged. Perhaps he already knew how the last emperor of India would live to the middle of the 19th century, peddling the furniture of his palace and chipping from the walls of his palace in Delhi the fragments of mosaics. With all the dustiness gathered by time, the architecture of Benares still retains its charm. All the mixture of form of the old Hindu, Dravidian, and Moslem can give new solutions to the unprejudiced architect. One can easily imagine a combination of the many-storied Tibetan structure with the comforts of an American skyscraper. One can draw a parallel from the palaces of Benares to the palaces of Venice and to a livable private dwelling. One can develop the style of American pueblos with the newest understanding, as is being done in Santa Fe. A Hindu complained to me of the lack of Hindu architects. I said to him, "If there are no architects, let an artist develop an idea, but let him proceed from out of the harmony of the folk consciousness combined with the character of its nature. One cannot defile the whole world with a uniform building. One cannot make out of Java a Swedish Stocksund, and one cannot visualize Comanches and Apaches in the houses of Boston. Appropriateness must be maintained. On the shores of the Ganges, a gray-bearded man, cupping his palms like a chalice, offers his entire possessions to the rising sun. A woman quickly telling her rhythms performs her morning pranayama on the shore. In the evening, she may again be there, sending upon the stream of the sacred river a garland of lights as prayers for the welfare of her children. And these fireflies of the woman's soul, prayer-inspired, travel long upon the dark, watery surface. Beholding these offerings of the spirit, one can even forget the stout priests of the golden temples. We are minded of other things. We recall those yogis who send into space their thoughts, thus constructing the coming Evolutaion. Not the usual priests these, but active hermits. They are bringing our thought near to the energy which will be revealed by scientists in the very near future. Gigantic stupas of Buddhism, burial mounds surrounded by a fence, the same kurgans of all centuries and nations, the kurgans of Uppsala in Sweden, Russian kurgans of Volhov on the way to Novgorod, the steppe kurgans of Scythians, surrounded by stones, all tell the legends of the same solemn Krima Tions which have been described by the skillful Arabian traveler Ibn Fadlan. Everywhere, the same purifying conflagrations. Everywhere, much incense, rose water, and fragrant sandalwood. Hence, the smoke from the bodies in the burning ghats of Benares is not turbid, and in Tibet also, cremation is used. Regard the gentle child games of the Orient, and listen to the complicated rhythms of the chants and soft music. There are not evident the profanities of the West. The Maharaja of Mysore is awakened with special songs, songs of beginning and of end. In Madura, in a crowded alley, an old man models the forms of the sacred images. He is the last old man. With him dies this knowledge. Thus is dying the past. So is approaching the future. Each day, a woman's hand molds the sand at the entrance of the house into a special design. This is the symbol that within the house all is well, and there is neither sickness, death, nor discord. If there be no happiness in the house, then the hand of the woman becomes stilled. A seeming shield of beauty is placed before the house by the hand of the woman at the benevolent hour. And little girls in schools early are being taught a variety of designs for the signs of happiness. An inexplicable beauty lives in this custom of India. Vivekananda called the women of India to work and to free Dham. He also asked the so-called Christians, if you so love the teaching of Jesus, why do you not follow it? So spoke the pupil of Ramakrishna, who passed through the substance of all teachings and learned through life not to deny. Vivekananda was not merely an industrious Swami, something lion-like rings in his letters. How he is needed now! Buddhism is the most scientific and most cooperative teaching, says the Hindu biologist Bose. It is a joy to hear how this truly great savant, who found his way to the mysteries of plant life, speaks about the Vedanta, Mahabharata, and about the poetry of the legends of the Himalaya. Only true knowledge can find the merited place for all existing things. And accompanying the voice of the savant, simple and comprehensive, the silvery tones of an electric apparatus tinkle out the pulse of the life of the plants, reopening pages of the world's knowledge, long since sealed. Bose's mother in her day sold all her jewels in order to give her son an education. The scientist, in demonstrating his kingdom, says, "Here are the children of the rich in luxurious conditions. See how they become puffed and baggy. They need a good storm to bring them back to healthy normalcy." Knowing the pulse of the plant world, the scientist approaches whole, sumly all the manifestations of life. He values highly Timur Yasef's review of his works. One of Bose's best books was written on the heights of the Punjab in Mayavati, in the shrine of Vivekananda. Vivekananda departed too soon. Bose and Tagore, noble images of India. The frescoes of Ajanta, the powerful Trimurti of Elephanta, and the gigantic stupa in Sarnath all speak of other ancient times, and this former beauty also glimmers in the fine and slender silhouette of a woman who carries her eternal water, water which feeds the hearth, and the well, as in biblical times, remains the central spot of the whole population. In the very backyard, In a tiny bed of meager flowers rests a small, homely image of Ganeshi, elephant of happiness. The family of Hindu coolies living in the shanty offers to him its last grains of rice. Not much happiness has this image brought to them. Against the evidence of such refined values as are seen in Ramakrishna, Rabindranath Tagore, Sir Jagadas Bose, one cannot become reconciled to that which still constitutes the contents of the temples. Here is a phallic cult, lingam in elephanta. Up to now, in the sanctuaries of this cult are seen the traces of fresh offerings. From the ancient wisdom we know that linga is the vessel of knowledge, and we know the scientific explanation from times immemorial of this wise distribution of energy. But now the basis of this worship is forgotten, and it has degraded into superstition. Another ugly spectacle. In a golden temple of Benares before us was led a white little goat. She was led into the sanctuary. There evidently she was approved of, because in a little while, frantically protesting, she was hurriedly dragged before us. In a minute, she was stretched out on the threshold of the temple, and the broad knife cut off her head. It was difficult to believe that a sacred action had taken place. The meat of the goat evidently went for food, because profests do not partake of any meat except that of offered sacrificial animals. And such animals the population evidently brings each day. The teaching which sanctioned the priests evidently pictured them as quite different. Even their appearance is undecorative, and they cannot guard the beauty of the symbols of knowledge. As long as the rule of castes is not comprehended properly, the country cannot develop. During our stay, we read of several difficult family dramas, founded on this ground of an evidently surviving prejudice. At the same time, the Vedanta and Advaita clearly establish the principle of unity. Some of the most cosmogonic parts of the Vedas are written by women, and now in India has arrived the epic of the woman. Greetings to the women of India. In spite of a superabundance of tourists, they seem to know America very little. One can understand this. The whole mass of tourists quickly flows through the sheet iron channels of tourist companies and never enters into a real and active contact with the life of the country. In the north of India, Americans are called nomads because the agencies give to these hurrying, breathless groups a special character, completely outside of the people's understanding. Out of the windows of the car glide by huddled little villages, those original producers of all utilities and the makers of the nation. But who cares for these primary sources? Ramakrishna says, in Atman, there is no distinction of male or female, of Brahmin or Kshatriya and the like. Ramakrishna executed the work of the sweeper to show personally that there were no distinctions. In December, we want to go into the Himalayas. We are regarded with astonishment. But now there is snow. Snow is feared, whereas the only time for the Himalayas is from November to February. Already in March, the curtain of fog rises. From May to August, only rarely, and for brief periods, can one see the entire glimmering range of snow, and truly such grandeur is nowhere paralleled. Just as when you are approaching the Grand Canyon of Arizona, when you approach the foothills of the Himalayas, you go through the most uninteresting landscape, and only for a moment, at dawn in Siliguri, do the white giants appear before you as the first messengers. And again, they are hidden in the curly jungles, and again, tea plantations, and again, barrack-like structures and factories. And only sometimes does a typical habitation appear and conceal itself again as a vision from another world. There are tales about the attacks of tigers and leopards, There are mountains of cases of tea with the mark Orange Pekoe. There is a Belgian miscyanary from Kurseong. It becomes cool. Crowds of small coolies are repairing the cave-ins from the last monsoon. In the frosty air, one cannot even imagine the pressure of the summer monsoon downpour from which all nature becomes moldy. There are few birds. Eagles are seen. Mountains are densely covered. The view of Darjeeling itself disappoints you. Is it necessary to seek the Himalayas in order to find merely a corner of Switzerland? The colorful types of the bazaar are not apparent at once, and the regular barracks and bungalows already strike one's eye. We search for a house. The first information is not Angkor aging. We are assured there are no good houses. Some are shown to us, lacking outlook and grounds, some immersed in the little streets of wooden country houses and fences. This is not suitable. We want something beyond, there before the image of all the Himalayas, where the city orchestra does not play its conventional tunes. You will find nothing there. But we are persistent. We go ourselves, and we find an excellent house, and calmness, and solitude, and the entire chain of Himalayas before us, and still another surprise. Just here lived the Dalai Lama during his long flight from Lhasa. For us, this house is just what is needed. Not on one occasion, only were we awakened by the chanting and the rhythmic beats around the house. These are the lamas, who, bowing to the ground many times, marched around our dwelling.